Okay, amazing. Well, welcome everyone. It's going to be a small group this morning. I feel like a lot of our participants are on the West Coast, so this might be early, but I'll share all of the resources afterwards. And then at least the points in our conversation today where we'll be talking with one another and not viewing certain pieces of content, those will all be recorded and I'll share those on the platform. But I know, Hannah, you're not on the platform, so I can email them to you as well. But welcome to our day-long conference on self-directed retirement savings. In case folks are interested, I can just share in the chat today's, let's see, schedule. There we go. So we're going to start with sort of a primer on what self-directed retirement savings look like, what the landscape looks like, and we'll have an opportunity. So we're going to watch a webinar that has been, oh yeah, Heather, I can send you the dial-in. Give me 1 second. Okay. Let's see if this works. So I think that dial-in, you can do the one tap mobile, or you can just dial that number and just message me in the chat if that doesn't work. So yeah, we'll get started with kind of a primer. For each of these sessions, we're going to be watching a webinar that the Next Egg has already recorded. So it's sort of a rewatch situation. And then I'll stop the webinar. We'll have 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A, feedback, reflections, just an opportunity to process what we learned. And during that time and space, I'd love to know from you all kind of what is emerging for you and what questions do you still have, so that the Next Egg can take those back and have those kind of inform the research we do in the future. So again, we'll start with an overview of self-directed retirement savings. We'll go into self-directed IRAs and solo 401ks. Within the IRA section, we'll also talk about self-directed IRA custodians, who those people are, how you can learn more about them, all of that good stuff. Then we'll go into solo 401ks, and we'll be talking a little bit about the anatomy of a plan document. If you haven't looked at a solo 401k plan document or aren't really sure what sort of the rules and stipulations are, we'll cover that during that time. And then I'm really excited because at 1 p.m. Eastern time, we have Laura Aldani coming in for about 60 minutes to have just a very open-ended Ask Me Anything session. Laura has been with the Next Egg since its inception and has done some really cool work in kind of designing her own self-directed IRA alongside an LLC. So she's able to have checkbook control of her self-directed retirement savings. So she can answer questions about that, but also the landscape at large. And then the last, it's open-ended for 3 hours. If no one shows up, then we'll cut it short. But those hours, I'm just going to be in the Zoom room in case folks want to jump in, ask questions, offer feedback, all of that good stuff. But that's really just an opportunity for me to connect more directly with Next Egg members, as well as other folks who are going to be joining our session today. And then the last thing I will mention, let's see if I can pull it up. All of the conversations we're going to be having today are intended to be a primer for this event, which is going to be hosted in 6 days. So next Tuesday, December 12th, we're having a 90-minute Ask Me Anything session with a really incredible all-star crew of people who have spent much of their careers thinking about values-aligned investing and are going to be sharing a lot of their wisdom and knowledge with us during that time. So that's kind of the arc of the next 2 weeks of programming with the Next Egg. So at this point, are there any questions that folks have or things they want to make sure we cover during today's conference? I know it's just the 3 of us, so it's nice to have a more intimate group. But Heather or Hannah, anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to check my audio. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for joining.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording so we can do our webinar. Okay. I'm just going to jump in real quick. So for folks who are watching at home later, we're looking at the Digging into Self-Directed Retirement Savings Options webinar, and we're at 33 minutes where Matt talks about self-dealing prohibited transactions. This is where things, as Heather mentioned in the chat, get really sticky. So the example that I know Janelle used in a previous webinar, and I think applies to folks who are looking to use SDIRAs to do more community-based investing, is let's say you live in the Bay Area and you go through the SDIRA process and you decide to use that money and invest it in a solar power cooperative that services your residential area. Because you would technically be benefiting from the power that that organization provides, that would be a prohibited transaction because it would be under this self-dealing clause. So that's something where it gets tricky, right? Because it's your retirement savings, so you want to invest in things that ideally in your old age you will be able to benefit from. But unfortunately, there are these self-dealing prohibited transactions that can sometimes hinder that process. So one of the things that the LIFT team has been talking about is, what if we had sort of like a networked way of supporting these initiatives around the country. So like Nairuti, for example, could support stuff in the Bay Area, and Hannah could support stuff in Atlanta, let's say, where maybe Heather is living, so it really needs to be more of an intervention at the ecosystem level, particularly when we're thinking about these rules. So just wanted to provide some examples there so folks know where the barriers of that kind of work lie. Any questions up to this point, or shall we continue forward?
None for me.
Okay.
None for me.
All right. Let's get back to it then.
Just be careful. Self-dealing is an important thing to watch out for. Now, the last prohibited transaction rule is called extension of credit. And extension of credit is basically, it says you can't extend credit between yourself and your IRA. So my IRA can't just loan me money, but also my IRA can't go get a loan, which I then go guarantee. So IRAs can, and even solo 401ks can go get loans to buy and invest in things, the most common being real estate, where they can get a mortgage. However, that loan has to be to the IRA or 401k or IRA LLC, which we'll talk about in a second. The loan is going to the IRA directly, and the IRA owner does not guarantee that debt or sign for it. Okay, it's the IRA's in for it entirely. Now that loan is called what is called a non-recourse loan. Okay, it's a special type of loan. There's a number of banks that operate in those. The 2 big ones are First Western, the other one's North American Savings Bank. They both have specialty websites. I'll just throw them out. One is called myiralender.com. Myiralender.com. That's First Western Federal Savings Bank, which is a mouthful. But they're at myiralender.com, and they specialize in loaning money to retirement accounts buying real estate. And they have these non-recourse loans that comply with the rules where you're not personally guaranteeing it. The other one's the other one is North American Savings Bank. And their specialty website is IRAlending.com, IRAlending.com. And those they also offer these non-recourse loans that comply with retirement plan rules. But if you go to your local bank or credit union or even mortgage loan officer, they are probably not gonna know what the heck you're talking about. If you're like, I'm using my IRA to buy real estate and I need a non-recourse loan, you might as well pack a tent and a sleeping bag because you're gonna be there overnight. So make sure you're dealing with people who are familiar with retirement accounts and self-directing, and in particular, buying real estate if you're getting that type of loan. Okay, let me jump forward now. A couple other topics I just want to hit, but that was the real big one, prohibited transactions. That was really a big topic. You got to make sure you're avoiding that. If you cause a prohibited transaction, if you violate that rule with an IRA, what happens is the entire IRA is disqualified. You lose the entire IRA. So it's really important that you stay in compliance with these rules. Even if, let's say you have a $1 million IRA and you engage it in a prohibited transaction of $10,000. Let's say, you paid your kids $10,000 out of some deal that your IRA was invested into. That $10,000 prohibited transaction caused a distribution of $1 million. You lost a $1 million account as being an IRA. Now, you still own all those assets personally now, but they are distributed out. They're no longer tax advantaged. If you're under 59 and a half, you have to pay the taxes and the penalty, a 10% early withdrawal penalty on the distribution. There's a lot of downside if you cause one. So you want to avoid that engaging in a prohibited transaction. Okay, now, so that's the first thing to make sure you know how to navigate is avoid the prohibited transactions. The second thing that you want to make sure you're navigating is something called UBIT, or sometimes it's called UBTI, and another tax called UDFI. These are a bunch of four-letter words that you want to stay away from. And they're basically a couple of scenarios where this will apply. So the easiest way to understand this is retirement accounts, when they were first created, were designed to receive investment income. So when Congress created retirement accounts and they said, we want these people to use them and invest them, and when they make money on the investments, they grow and they don't have to pay taxes. When they were doing that, they were very specific. They need to be investment income, like capital gain income when you sell something for profit, rental income if it's real estate, let's say, interest income if you're loaning money to someone, royalty income if you're investing in some type of new technology that can have royalty income off of it, or even certain natural resources, mineral rights, or oil and gas stuff. That income from those things is considered passive investment income. Also, dividend income when you're invested in a C corporation. So, for example, if your IRA owns Apple stock, Apple's a C corp, they pay corporate taxes, or they go to Ireland and don't, but you know what I mean? They're a C corp for tax purposes. And when they distribute dividends down to their shareholders, and your IRA owns that stock, you're not worrying about this because it's investment income. It's dividend income, which is exempt here. So, so when we receive that type of income, investment income, we're not paying UBIT tax. The area where you get caught on this is if you're receiving business income, not investment income, business income, your IRA will get subjected to this tax of UBIT. Now, the rate for UBIT is 37%. Okay, so you want to make sure you're avoiding this. There's a structure called a corporate blocker, which is in my book. It's way too advanced for what we're talking about today, but that's the way you can, if you're going to have that tax, you can reduce it from 37% to 21% by doing what's called a blocker corporation strategy. But now this isn't the end of the world. If you're going to have UBIT and it's a good investment, it's still fine. You're just going to pay tax along the way, right? That's what you do outside your retirement account. And that's what, frankly, you're doing when you're buying any publicly traded stock. The corporation's paying corporate tax and then sending the profits after taxes paid down to the IRA. So let's say I want to invest in a small business. It's a C corp. It's a startup company or it's a local existing small business and they're a C corporation. Great, my IRA invested into it. I own some stock in it and it shoots off some profits. That goes to my IRA. I get some dividend income. I don't need to worry about UBIT. Now, let's say that local business is an S corporation. Well, my IRA can't own an S corporation. Remember, that's one of the assets IRAs cannot own. So I just wouldn't even be able to make that investment. But let's say the common scenario is that new business or existing small business is an LLC. And my IRA wants to buy ownership in the LLC. Well, an LLC is what's called a pass-through company for tax purposes. They do not pay tax. They just pass the taxable income, which is business income, this is a business, down to your IRA or down to any other shareholder who then picks it up on their personal returns. So when your IRA gets profit from an LLC, it ends up being subject to this tax of UBIT, all right? So let's say I invested, $100,000 into a local business and it's an LLC, they make $10,000 for the year and they send me, my $10,000 in profit to my IRA. My IRA would have this tax due on it because it's receiving business income. Now the IRA files its own tax return, it's called 990T, and it pays the tax. So now again, it would be 37%. On my example of 10,000, you actually, until you're at 12,000, you don't pay the full 37%. So you pay a little bit less, but it's effectively 37% once you hit 12,000 of income each year. So you may have a little bit of UBIT as you go. There are strategies to try and get around that, but I just want to flag this tax for now so you know when it applies. And pretty much it's going to happen when there's an LLC that's a business you're investing into, or a real estate development. That's another issue where you can have UBIT tax because a real estate development is business income also. Or let's say your IRA, and we have lots of clients to do this, they use their IRAs and they buy and sell real estate and they just buy and rehab a property and flip it and then they go do the next one. If you do a lot of that with an IRA, more than just a couple deals a year, you can run into this UBIT tax. So we tell clients who are flipping real estate in particular is you can do 1 or 2 a year. It's going to be, you don't have to worry about UBIT yet. 3 or 4, you're in a gray area. 5 or more though, your IRA is going to have UBIT because it's doing so much of those buying and selling real estate. It looks like it's in the business of real estate, which causes business income and this business income tax. Okay, so just be on the lookout for UBIT tax. Now, let me say this, I just want to note this, there is another version of UBIT that's called UDFI that essentially is a tax when you leverage with debt. I don't have a slide for this, but I just want to note that, that there is this tax called UDFI. And UDFI, basically what that is, and the example is the easiest way to understand it. The IRS has said if you use your retirement account and you go buy stuff with your retirement account, but you get debt to leverage it. So let's say I bought a property for $100,000. What happens is they want to tax the debt. So let's say my IRA buys a property for $100,000. The IRA puts down $40,000 cash and I get a loan, a non-recourse loan from a bank who knows what they're doing for $60,000. Well, to the IRS, they look at that deal and they say, well, this is 60% leverage with debt. This isn't retirement plan money. Only 40% of the deal is retirement plan money. So when you make money on this real estate, when you sell the property for profit or you're collecting rental income, we're going to tax 60% of the profits because that wasn't retirement plan income. That was debt that you brought in. Now the retirement plan gets the money, but it has to pay this kind of tax along the way because it brought in this non-retirement plan dollars to help grow it and make better returns. So that tax is called UDFI. Again, I have a whole chapter in my book on it. I've got dozens of blog articles. I have a whole hour webinar on UDFI if you go to my site and you want to dig into that. But just keep in mind that does apply when you leverage debt. Now, that is not a bad thing. Leveraging with debt can be a very useful tool in the same way when you buy a house to live in or a rental property in your personal name, you're maximizing purchasing power and you're using the bank's leverage to help, generate a greater return, hopefully. So it's not the end of the world. You just want to go in eyes wide open and know that it's there. Okay, that's it on taxes. Now let's talk about a couple of structuring things you can do. You can use an IRA LLC, and this is a common structure that is used. And I got all these cases over here for the attorneys. I know there's some attorneys on here, so I want to let you know I gave the citations on all this, okay? This is just, I'm not making it up as I go. But what we're doing here with the IRA LLC is rather than the IRA investing in something and let's say being kind of a private lender here and lending money and making a bunch of notes, the IRA can invest into an LLC and own the LLC 100%. And then the LLC can go out and make the investments. It could invest in a small business. It could be play the banker and loan someone money. It could buy real estate. You know, the LLC is kind of like a holding company. The reason a lot of people do this is when you're transacting out of your IRA directly that's self-directed, you have to go through your custodian. So you have to go through us when you're doing that. And it's not that painful, but it does take paperwork and back and forth and our name's on everything and you're approving it for us to sign for you. You're authorizing us, we hold the money, we're sending the wire, we're sending the checks, we're getting the income. And and so you have to check with us and there's some back and forth and you log into your account and there's logins so you can track this stuff. But a lot of people kind of feel like they lose a little bit of control if they're doing a lot of different investments that they're very active in. Like let's say you're gonna fix and flip a property or just rehab and hold a property. Well, that could be transactionally intensive, right? You would be paying contractors and buying it and leasing it, and there's a lot going on there. So rather than having us send all those checks and everybody's having to deal with us, which there's fees for that too, you have your IRA invest into an LLC, which it owns 100%. The LLC in turn goes out and buys the property or lends the money or invests in the small business. And this LLC, you can be manager of. So if this is Matt Sorensen's IRA here, my IRA, Directed Trust Company, FBO, Matt Sorensen IRA, owns the LLC 100%, but Matt Sorensen is the manager. Manager of an LLC is like president of the corporation. Manager of the LLC means I can sign for everything for the LLC. So IRA money is invested into the LLC. I've got an LLC bank account. I'm the signer on the checks for the LLC, or I can authorize wires. I can sign on any deals I cut, whether it's a note or a purchase contract or dealing with a vendor or a contractor to repair a property or a stock purchase agreement or an LLC agreement that I'm investing in another business. I'm doing all that stuff out of the LLC. Then that money goes to the LLC on those investments. It can build up in the LLC bank account to invest in something else. Or I send the money from the LLC back to the IRA, and then I can take distributions from the IRA. So just keep in mind the LLC is here in the middle. It owns the assets. You can be manager of it. And some people call it a checkbook control IRA. We call it an IRA LLC, but checkbook control IRA meaning that you have control of the bank account that the LLC has. The IRA money is invested in the LLC, but you have control of the LLC's bank account. So you do kind of have the checkbook, so to speak. Now, this is your retirement account. Okay, you are still subject to all the privilege transaction rules, so you can't just do whatever the heck you want. You can perform all the administrative investment oversight functions. You still decide what to invest into. You're signing on contracts, you're managing the bank account, you're signing checks, you're receiving income, you're screening tenants, if you're into that stuff, whatever. You can do all that type of stuff. However, you cannot pay yourself a salary or a commission or any wages for being the manager of the LLC. You also can't benefit from the LLC's investment still. So just because it's in an LLC doesn't mean that your kids can stay there or that you can stay there. If it's real property, you still can't invest in your own business or loan yourself money. Okay, that's all still restricted. That LLC bank account, do not put personal money in it. This is not your LLC. This is your IRAs. You've got to keep the money separate. I had a client audited a few years back on an IRA LLC that someone else set up, and his bank account was a mess because he was putting personal money in there. He was actually spending, out of that account on personal things, and he had a bunch of problems. The IRS did not appreciate that, let's just say. Also, do not use the LLC bank account for personal purposes, okay? You can't just cut yourself a distribution and say, oh, I'll just report it on my tax return. No, it's got to go back to your IRA custodian, and then you take distributions from the IRA custodian.
Hey, Matt, I'm just gonna jump in real quick and say, if you could limit the rest of the presentation to about 10 more minutes, that would be great. I want to also
Three
make sure.
slides left.
Okay, so you're gonna get to the solo 401ks too, right?
Yep, that's this.
Okay,
After this, that's the next slide.
thank you, thank you.
Okay, so there's different variations of the IRA LLC. So you can have multiple IRAs invested into one LLC that then goes and makes an investment or loans money or buys stock in a company, buys real estate, whatever. So here we just have multiple IRAs. This could be my IRA, my spouse's IRA, owning one LLC that makes one investment. And this could, let's say that we did this, this is my wife's IRA and it puts in 60,000. My IRA puts in 40,000. We're gonna break up the ownership, 60% to her IRA, 40% to my IRA. When we combine in retirement accounts with other people, even people who are disqualified to each other like spouses, you have to break up the ownership based on the dollars. Now we've done LLCs like this with 10 people in it, or, sometimes it's your brother's personal money, your IRA, your roommate from college, whatever. You've got like a bunch of people who just pool a bunch of money in and to buy a bigger asset. Maybe it's a smaller apartment building or a commercial property that you couldn't do on your own, but you get 5 or 6 people together who each have 100,000 in their retirement account or personal funds, and you're like, oh, we can actually pull this deal off. So you can have what we call a multi-member IRA LLC where there's multiple accounts in here. Now, this LLC requires a partnership tax return because there's multiple parties here. Whereas this LLC back here, IRA owns 100%, there's no tax return required for it. It's called a disregarded entity, so the IRS does not expect a tax return there. Okay, so that's the IRA LLC, very commonly used. We charge $800 in our law firm for an IRA LLC like this. You always have your state filing fees, and $1,500 for an IRA LLC like that. I wouldn't spend more than a couple thousand. Some law firms charge $2,500 for these, but there's competent people out there that can do them for, especially this structure back here which is the more common one, for under $1,000. So, okay. Now the last topic to talk about is called a solo 401k. Now here's a diagram here, and this is the tricky part about a solo 401k. This is much more complicated than a self-directed IRA. It has much more benefits though. It also doesn't work for everybody. So it's one of these things that if it works for you, it's pretty cool. It takes a little more work, but it's pretty cool. But it's not going to work for everybody also. Most of our clients self-direct an IRA because it's easier, and frankly, everyone qualifies for an IRA. An IRA is an individual retirement account. Okay, if you're an individual, you qualify. You can roll over money you have in other accounts, or you can make new contributions. Everybody essentially can have an IRA. 401k, on the other hand, and we're going to talk about a solo 401k, which is the variation of a 401k that gets self-directed very frequently. A 401k, on the other hand, an individual cannot set up a 401k. Matt Sorensen cannot set up a 401k. A business has to create a 401k. Now, let's say I have Matt Sorensen Inc., or Matt Sorensen Sole Proprietorship, or MNS Enterprises LLC. Okay, I have a business. The business adopts the 401k and creates it for the benefit of its employees. Let's say it's just me, right? Which is what the solo K works for. And the solo K, by the way, is basically a 401k you create for yourself, for someone who's self-employed, where you don't have other employees. And these are becoming much more common in the kind of sharing economy. There's a lot more self-employment out there. A lot of people who have basically gone 1099 or have their own business, but they don't have other employees. Maybe they have a partner or a spouse involved in their business, but they don't have other employees where they'd have to create a more complicated 401k. So you can do what's called this solo 401k. So let's go back to Matt Sorensen Inc. Okay, let's say I have my own little S corporation that I use. I do some consulting in, or I have a small business, or I'm a real estate agent, or whatever I do, okay? I'm making money in Matt Sorensen Inc., and I said, I want to create a 401k for myself. So I create this solo 401k. Matt Sorensen Inc. adopts the 401k plan for the benefit of its employees. Those employees just happen to be Matt Sorensen, and that's it. So I'm going to create the most generous 401k structure I can, right? It's for me. So, and I can only put in money if I want for me. So you can do that where you can put up to $56,000 a year right now as of 2019. And that $56,000 comes from a combination of employee contributions and the employer doing what a lot of people know is like matching, or what are called employer contributions. So if you think of the regular 401k, for many of you who've had one before with an employer, let's say you had the Dunder Mifflin 401k plan, okay? You were making an election and they were taking out some of your money from payroll, and then the company was also throwing in a match on it, okay? Well, that was you putting in employee contributions that was coming off your paycheck from your money made. And then the employer match was basically employer contributions. So if you look at the diagram here, we have the company adopting the 401k. This would be Matt Sorensen Inc., let's say, again, my business. It creates a new 401k plan for the benefit of me who owns it. I put in employee contributions. You can, this number's, that's last year's number, sorry, but you can put in 19,000 a year now for 2019, not 18.5. You can put 19,000 a year into the 401k. The company can also do a match, which for S corps and C corps and you can put in 25%. For other entities like sole props and partnerships, it's 20%. But it's 25% of whatever you made. So let's say I took a W-2 for my S corp for $100,000 that year. I put in 19. I can actually do 19 of the 100,000. I can also put in 25% of the 100,000 I made that I took as a W-2 out of that company. You have to do it out of your wage. It's not out of the profit. It's out of the wage income on an S corp. So if I had a $100,000 W-2, I could put in 25,000. So I could throw in 19 off of my employee contribution plus 25% of what my total wage or salary was out of the business, 25,000. So in that example, I made 100 grand. I could put in $34,000 into the 401k. That's a huge contribution. So for those who are self-employed, again, with no employees, who are trying to put more money away, the solo K is a really cool option. Now, I can also roll over old retirement plan funds. Let's say I've got the old employer 401k. I could roll that into my solo K. Let's say I've got an old IRA. I can roll that into the solo K. Also, the solo K is going to have its own bank account in the solo K's name, which I can be the signer for. One of the cool things about a solo K is I can be trustee of the solo K. So as trustee of the solo K, I can sign all the checks. I've got checkbook control and authority right out of it. I don't need an LLC. I can use an LLC if I want it for asset protection, but I don't need it. I can manage the investments right out of the, okay. So if you look back here, you know, I can lend money out. I can invest in another business. I can buy real estate directly, or I can have it owned by a 401k LLC, which buys real estate. So the 401k has a lot of benefits in that I am directing the money right out of the 401k. I do not have to have a custodian. Now, most of our clients use us to do record keeping on it, which we do a quarterly statement for you. If you set up with us, then we also update your plan as required by the IRS. But you're controlling the funds and making the investments and processing things, okay? You don't have to run it through us, which you have to do in an IRA because you have to have a third-party custodian. But in a 401k, again, you can self-trustee it, open up the bank wherever you want to bank with, open up your local bank account for in a 401k checking account in the bank's name. Now, there's banks we know that we work with that know how to do these accounts, or you can use a local bank or who you currently use for other banking. Another cool thing about the 401k, Mike, is if I'm buying real estate, let's say my 401k is buying real estate directly or own an LLC that bought real estate. When I get debt, remember when I talked about UDFI on this and said the IRS wants to tax on the profits from the debt piece of it. In a 401k, you're exempt from that. You don't have to worry about UDFI. On leveraged real estate in a 401k, you are exempt. It's specific to leveraged real estate. Essentially what happened, the 401k industry lobbied for this. The IRA industry was asleep, okay? The 401k industry got an exemption, IRA industry got left out. So there's an exemption essentially where you don't have to worry about that tax when you leverage with debt using a 401k to buy real estate. Now you can have a spouse. Let's say you have a spouse that works in your business or even a business partner. They can have their own account in the solo K where they can be putting up to $56,000 a year into the solo K as well. And it's one solo K plan with simply multiple accounts. So there's a lot of cool things you can do there. If you have other partners that are also owners in the business, or if you have a spouse that participates in the business, where you can have accounts for them too under the same one solo K plan.
Matt, we have a good amount of questions kind of in the game. Are you ready to move into those or?
Yep, that's the last one, so.
Great.
Let's
Cool. So I don't know, maybe Matt, I'll draw your attention to there's question and answer section that you may actually be able to see. And we can answer a number of these live, but if there are any that are easy to type in an answer to, feel free to do that.
Okay.
And we're gonna be doing this a little bit, we're gonna have to use our memory exercise. I think I'm just gonna answer the questions in the order that they came in. So we'll go back to the IRAs first and then to the 401k questions, if that's okay for folks.
Yeah. I see 8 open ones.
Yeah, so
Okay,
feel
start
free
with
to
Ray.
type any of the short ones that you can answer, feel free to type an answer in to those.
Okay.
And we'll call the attention to that. And in the meantime, we'll go to the earlier questions that came in. Janelle, do you want to add anything?
Do I want to add anything? I just want to say thank you for being so clear in how you explain things, because some of these things I've looked at or read multiple times and I'm still like, huh? So you definitely made a lot of things clearer this time around. So
Okay.
thank you.
My
Yeah.
pleasure.
And I have a few questions, but I'm going to let others go first. Or you can pull out some questions there.
Great, so Amy,
So I'll just pause here. We can do one of two things. We can either listen to the questions and responses that were in the original webinar, or we can just pause it here and open it up for Q&A right now. What would folks prefer? You can either unmute yourself and tell me, or put it in the chat.
I'd be down to hear what the questions were that were.
Okay. Anyone else have a different preference, or shall I keep playing?
Can we save 10 to 15 minutes at the end just for open discussion questions?
Yeah, so this is going to take about another 30 minutes, and then we have until 11. So I think we'll have 10 minutes at the end for questions that emerge from this space. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and if the other thing is I could play the next 30 minutes a little faster, and that would just give us a little more time for Q&A. Is everyone comfortable? I don't know, I could do like 1.5.
Let's try it. That sounds interesting.
Okay. All right, let's try it. But if it's too fast, just chat me and I'll slow it down. All right, here we go.
he asks, way in the beginning of your introduction, the PayPal and Yelp examples seem that they would be prohibited because of self-dealing transactions. Can you explain how they were not?
Great question. So what they did was they put their IRAs in when they were doing series, like, like in the rounds of funding. So it wasn't at the very beginning. They were at the beginning, but they were basically raising money and getting diluted and diluted and diluted. So they put money in later rounds of funding. So, which was okay because they were.
Okay, let me slow it down. Yeah, I can do 1.25. Let's try this one.
Investing with other venture capital people or angel investors in those early rounds, getting the same deal. And they were frankly diluted down pretty significantly. Now, I will say this, if you have, and I've dealt with some clients on this in startups that want to have their IRA even own a majority ownership stake, and this Peter Thiel did it in companies. It's possible, but man, that'd take me 3 hours. So so it's cool if you really want to do that. It's not common in the self-directed space, but it's possible. You just need to get a consult with a lawyer who knows how to do that.
Okay, great, thank you. So Tom is asking, if organization, would the annual membership fees be included in what could be paid out of the IRA? Presuming the cooperative invests in projects that generate returns, the cooperative gives the money back to members on some schedule, whereby would those returns go back into my self-directed IRA? Does that make sense?
So I have to understand what the cooperative is. Like, is it structured as an LLC? Is it a corporation? Is it a nonprofit?
This is kind of a question I was percolating on too. They are often corporations, and then they often pay the returns not based on how much money you put in, but based on like how much you patronize the cooperative, like how many groceries you bought or how much energy you bought. And I started like percolating while I was listening too on whether that might be some sort of UBIT.
Yeah, that probably would not be a good, viable investment for an IRA, because your returns are based on use, of yourself or certain people you may associate in with your IRA. And so I wouldn't I wouldn't use an IRA for that. I think that would be self-dealing or conflict of interest privilege transaction. So I don't think that would be a viable investment.
Yeah, we have set up some co-ops where the membership just pays a fixed return, like a fixed dividend. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing that would be better, but when it is based on patronage, that does create an interesting situation.
Yeah, so what you have to do, like when let's say an IRA was gonna invest in a cooperative, like the custodian, whoever it is, gonna say, all right, what is this? Like, is it an LLC? Is it, okay, oh no, I bought shares in a corporation, okay? And then I get dividends presumably from the shares in the corporation. So that's fine, but that's based off of the cooperative or corporation, whatever business activity they're doing that can then pay dividends.
Did I answer it?
Yeah, I have not actually dealt with, I mean, I've had clients buy weird stuff with their retirement accounts, like stuff I'm like, you're crazy. And hey, it's there, but some of them end up making money, but so what do I know? But the cooperative actually have not looked at.
Okay,
My sense is because it's not possible, but there might be a way to do it if it is, like you said, it's not based on patronage, as long as it is a corporation and you're owning corporate shares.
Yeah, most of the time cooperatives aren't things that people buy into for the purpose of earning a return.
Yeah.
Exactly, but yeah, some co-ops are now setting up kind of preferred shares or special categories of shares for that. And then there's also investment cooperatives, so Tom made a note here. That yeah, people are forming cooperatives to pool funds to do local investing, and that.
And we're-
sounds like an idea.
we're also gonna cover some of that in possibly future webinars, like it reminds me a little bit of the collective investment trust that we're gonna cover in the employer-directed webinar with Rob Thomas. So this, I'm gonna move us along. I'm guessing the answer to this question is no, given the context you set out, but can my son do the repairs paid for by the IRA?
No, yeah, sounds disqualified persons, that would cause a credit transaction.
Okay, so Ray asks, I am curious about the ways that self-directed IRAs and solo 401ks can be used to support affordable housing. Do folks have examples of people getting together and putting retirement funds together to support community land trusts or to support people with low incomes to be able to purchase homes? And this, yeah.
Yeah,
This may be something we go deeper into on the next egg, actually, because that's part of the vision. I saw some questions around, okay, how do I get my money moved? ASAP, I want it in there. The other kind of side to that question is then making sure that we're all on the same page with collective literacy. We're all heightening our literacy about and how those funds get invested. So I imagine that can be a space where we kind of share knowledge and information in the next egg itself.
yeah, I mean, in terms of affordable housing or supporting people with low income, there's lots of ways self-directed retirement accounts can be used. Community land trusts or things that are, those are always going to depend on the details, and that's not a great answer. But when you get into like I'm just gonna be honest, the retirement account rules are all designed because they presume you're making an investment with an intent to make profit. Now we can say, all right. And so the company structure or the investment structure has to be about, I'm getting shares of the profits being made. Like that's the objective, because that's all retirement accounts have are dollars, right? The retirement accounts don't do anything. They just can put money into stuff. And so, but they do it, and it's designed in a retirement account to receive income to build for that owner's retirement. So, but it can be used to be investing in low income projects. A lot of people will use their retirement account to fund other people purchasing property. Many people own rental properties, whether they're single family, fourplexes, duplexes. They invest in apartment buildings. I have a lot of clients in the low income tax credit space too, that they also work with people that invest retirement accounts into those deals. But even on your individual basis, directing your own account, you can be meeting those same objectives with how you want to use your money to invest, that also supports goals and things that matter and have value to you. But a lot of those
I'm going to move us along just so we get to all the questions. If that's
okay. All right. I bill by the hour, so I can talk forever.
Is there a difference between self-directed IRAs and self-directed IRAs with checkbook control? How do I get checkbook control of my IRA?
Yes. In order to have checkbook control, you have to have an IRA LLC, which I had a diagram on. So you have to use an IRA LLC. When someone says checkbook control IRA, they mean an IRA LLC. You have to have both, an IRA and the LLC.
So for the UDFI, you mentioned that the IRA takes the percentage of the profits that matches with the percentage of debt you take out. Don't you only make a profit if you sell the property? Can you not keep the house for yourself, or is that a prohibited transaction?
Yes, you cannot keep the house for yourself because you don't own it, the IRA does. Just like if you had a bunch of cash in your retirement account, you couldn't just take that out. That would be a distribution. So you would presumably sell the property. the proceeds would go to the retirement account and you would have that UDFI tax if it was leveraged with debt.
All right, great. Can an LLC set up a solo 401k?
Yes, so as long as that LLC is a business, let's say it's your small business or you are self-employed, it could adopt a solo 401k for you.
Great. And can you please summarize what the advantages of an IRA 100% owning an LLC?
It's easy, the IRA owns the LLC 100%. The IRA money is invested in the LLC bank account. You can control it. You can cut the checks, sign the contracts. You're overseeing and managing the LLC, right? So it kind of puts you in the driver's seat to get deals and transactions done. Also, when the IRA owns the LLC 100%, there's no tax return for the LLC. The IRS calls it a disregarded entity, so they don't make you file a tax return. So your administrative stuff is less. You just got to keep the LLC active with the state. Some people also do it for asset protection, like if they're buying real property and they're worried about liabilities on the property for themselves or for their IRA. Also, the LLC gives you some liability protection too.
I'm going to go to a question now that I just missed. It was in the chat, but it was an earlier question, which is more about, it's pretty exhaustive questions from Tom, but it deals with questions around the level of involvement that the next egg will have. For example, when we start our self-directed IRAs, does the custodian, is that the one that checks against problematic investments? Is that something the next egg organization is going to help with? Or will we end up needing an SD IRA custodian plus an investment advisor, or do we have to become expert enough ourselves?
Last one, you have to be expert yourself. Here's the thing is you're captain of your own ship, so to speak, and you can hire the professionals. You hire a lawyer, I'll help you, but you'll pay for it, right? You have a financial advisor over the account, they're going to charge you. So now you can get those professional services, and many should, especially if they're new to it. But you can also self-educate yourself. That's why I wrote a book, In many ways, it was the people like, I was dumb. You just told everybody what you know. And now why does anyone need to hire you? Well, people just need to know what they can do. So, but in the end, your custodian will stop stuff. Like if we see stuff you can't do, we're not going to let you do it. But we're not looking into detail and reviewing stuff extensively. No IRA custodian is. And you're also signing paperwork that says, I know what I'm doing. I'm making the decision, do what I want, so.
Great, thank you. So Camille asks, does the custodian count as an accredited investor for the purposes of securities laws, or are you still looking at the owner of the account? Same with the IRA LLC. Is that considered an accredited investor as an LLC, or do you look through to the account owner?
Look through to the account owner on both. Her IRA, so if the account owner is an accredited investor, their IRA is, as would be their IRA LLC.
Okay. And Alex is asking, can an LLC set up a solo 401k?
Yes. So again, that LLC has to be a business as self-employment. One thing that on an LLC, I'll just say we get a common problem with is people like, well, my LLC owns rental properties. Well, that's rental income. That's not business income. So it needs to just be an LLC that has business income. As long as you have some self-employment income in that LLC, it can adopt a solo K for you.
Okay, and this question might be somewhat related, but I'll read it anyways. Why is it that you can set up an LLC for an IRA, even if you're not self-employed, but you have to be self-employed for the solo 401k?
Okay, those are two different things. Those are two different variations. So when you think of the solo 401k, take a step back. Remember, individuals cannot have a solo K. Businesses adopt solo Ks for their employees. So when I say you have to have a business, like an S Corp, a sole proprietorship, an LLC, I'm just saying that you cannot just create a solo K as an individual. The business must create it for the benefit of its employee. You're the employee, right? So Dunder Mifflin, Michael Scott cannot just go set up a 401k, all right? Dunder Mifflin has to adopt, Dunder Mifflin Incorporated or Dunder Mifflin LLC has to adopt the 401k for Michael Scott, okay? So that's why we're talking about an entity on the 401k side. The IRA, on the IRA side, you're an individual. You can just set up an IRA. But now you need to decide, where's my IRA going to invest? Is it going to invest in real estate directly, or invest in a company, or invest in a small business? Or maybe I wanted to invest into an LLC, which is just a holding company, and the LLC makes the investment. So they're different. The LLC is just put in a different spot. Hopefully that makes sense.
Great. So we have a question that I want to go to, which is, I understand that the IRA custodian has to approve every transaction and can refuse to allow you to put money into a project you want to support because the custodian thinks it's too risky. Is that true? And if so, don't you also have to pay the custodian for each transaction? And what are typical fees for that?
Okay. Yes, the custodian is going to approve transactions. Mostly what they're looking for and what we're looking for is to make sure we know it's not a problem, right? I don't want clients to engage. Like if I see an IRA investing into a company that that person owns, or it's loaning money to someone with the same last name, we're gonna look into that. We wanna make sure there's not a prohibited transaction, you know? If we see some set of documents the IRA is investing into that are really weird and look like nobody, like an attorney or someone didn't know what they were doing, put them together, we're gonna say, hey, you sure you wanna do this? If you're like, no, like, I wanna do it. I mean, again, it's like the account owner's money, we would process that. But we will raise issues and put the brakes on certain things that we know you can't do, because we have that obligation. Like, our regulators come to us and are like, why did you let this person do this? That's illegal, right? IRAs can't do that. But on the other hand, it's true in that you are making decisions on what you think is a good investment. So if it's an issue of, do I think this is a good investment or not? I'm really not passing judgment on that, except to say maybe those documents just look weird, like they're not done right. But if you still want to invest, I'll let you. It's not illegal or prohibited. It's just maybe sloppy. So that's where you can get some issues. Now, yes, you will pay fees. The more investments you do, the more fees you'll have. Because of that, a lot of people use the IRA LLC if they're gonna have multiple investments, because then their IRA just makes one investment to the IRA LLC, pays one fee, and then the IRA LLC can have 10 investments, and you're making all those investments. I don't see those investments. And so those are all happening out of the LLC, which you have control of, and you're not paying more fees to a custodian for.
Great. So Laura is asking all the panelists to post in the chat any online or written resources to the question of things to keep in mind with regards to local alternative investments made through SDIRAs, returns, risks, and other risks and challenges related to taking distributions eventually from this account. And so she's just saying that all that's being posted online about SDIRAs, yet to see this topic covered. So maybe if anything comes to mind, otherwise we can move that question to a next egg forum dialogue.
Yeah, I do have a due diligence, top 10 FAQ due diligence on my blog. It's just more generic to, you know, what due diligence things to think of when investing in your retirement account. But
great, yeah, that'd be great. We can maybe someone on the chat can pull that and put it in the chat. Natasha asks, do we need to go through a company to create a self-directed IRA, or can we set one up on our own? And additionally, I'm going to put in the chat the list that Sophia has put together of solo providers. But go ahead and answer if you have.
Yeah, you have to have an IRA custodian. So that's a requirement because they have to report to the IRS and they're the actual trustee of your IRA. Solo 401ks, you just have to have a plan document. You can be the trustee. We do the plan documents in our law firm, $495 if you just want the docs and no consultation, $995 if you want a consultation with a lawyer on how it works and how you set up, right? But the solo key, you don't have to have a custodian, but you have to have the plan documents. And our documents are pre-approved by the IRS, so you can self-trustee it, you can invest it into self-directed assets. A lot of plan documents, like you get a solo 401k from Charles Schwab, is going to be restrictive into buying brokerage product. So just make sure whatever plan documents you get, which you will have to get some from some provider. You can't just do it yourself. You have to get it from somebody, not us, but just somebody that has a pre-approved document.
Yeah, we should also maybe have that question on as a forum question on the next day as well, because there's some thoughts that we've been thinking about as next day organizers as well. So can a person with an ITIN, not a social security number, open an IRA 401k retirement account? And also, yeah, so maybe answer that one first, and I'll go to the next one.
Yes, as long as they're filing a tax return, they
Okay.
could. So as long as they're filing a 1040 tax return, they could.
Great. So if a business is an LLC taxed as a partnership with multiple owners, 5 to 15, for example, would that still be an eligible business for starting a solo 401k since there are no employees?
There are just multiple owners, just no other employees besides owners. So, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Do a solo K. I've never had that many partners in a solo K, but that's the rule. Partners can all participate in the same solo K plan. Each person has their own account in the plan. And as long as you don't have employees, you don't have to do the more extensive 401k where you have to have like a Prudential or a Nationwide or some, you know, big platform with mutual funds for everybody. Yeah, you could do a solo K in that example. Great.
What happens if you are self-employed and then 1 year later end up hiring a full-time employee? What would happen with your account?
Okay, so you'll have a year after you hire the full-time employee. You'll have 1 year from when you hired that person, and then that person has to be over 21, work more than 19 hours a week, and work for you for a year. Once those three things have hit, you can keep the solo K, but you have to essentially freeze it. So whatever money's already in there is fine, but you can't make new contributions. Because if you make new contributions, you have to offer it to your employee. Now you may do that. You know, a lot of our clients will. There's kind of two roads where they'll go. One, they'll just freeze it and say, I can't afford to do it for my employee too. Okay, just freeze it then, work with the money you have, or maybe roll it out to an IRA. You can do either thing. Just freeze it, leave it in the 401k and work with it, or close it down and roll it to an IRA. Or you can transition the 401k to a 401k that's more common for when you have employees, where you are still self-directing your piece, but you have a 401k for your employee who may not be interested in doing what you want to do, but just wants to save for retirement, invest in maybe. So you could kind of transition that into a more, well, it'll be more expensive, but it's a good benefit if you are growing your business and planning to have employees.
Great, and I'm just noticing, oh, go ahead, Janelle.
Oh, okay. That reminded me of another question I had, which is just if you stop having self-employment income.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can just basically freeze the account, just can't add more to it, right? But you can continue to hold and manage the account, is that right?
Yeah, you don't have to freeze it even. So, because a lot of self-employed people, their income's up and down, right? And so you might have a great year where you have net taxable income and you want to put money in, and then the next year you may have a loss or you didn't make much. And so you can keep the 401k without having to technically freeze it. And then hopefully next year you're back up and you can contribute. The freeze is necessary when you have an employee because you have to officially say, I'm not using it anymore because I can't and I have to be fair to my employee. So you have to officially freeze it. But if you're just up and down and it's just you just keep it, contribute 1 year, don't the next, contribute the next, that's okay.
Got it,
And
thanks.
that's common for solo Ks.
Yeah.
So a couple interesting questions in the chat. Laura asks about the $9.99 monthly fee to participate in this Next Egg group be something that I could legally pay for with funds from my SD IRA. I'm seeing some head shaking, and just to address that, we're really we feel like there's some gaps in why people have not taken on self-directed IRAs and 401ks en masse that is needed to actually utilize this as a tool to reinvest in our local communities. And so the $9.99 monthly fee is really just a very lean innovation on our part to see if we can crowdsource some funds to pay the CEL primarily as an organizing body to help hold this organizing platform. If it is cost prohibitive for anyone, please do just reach out and we'll include you in the online platform. We want to be inclusive, but if you do have the disposable income and the comfortability to support this work, that's great. You can also, if you want to support it in a bigger way and you want to send a check for $100 or $250 or whatever, that would be great as well to support this work. There's another clarification. No UBIT tax on debt note and interest payments to an SD IRA from an LLC, correct? UBIT is only on profits derived from stock or ownership shares in an LLC.
Yeah, that's correct.
Great. I started my own business as an LLC in Q1 2019. Can I use either IRA or Solo 401 Solo K to invest in my business to help get the business off the ground?
No, because it's your own business and you're disqualified. Now I got some options. So one idea, I'll just throw out a quick one. The first idea I would do is, and this is another perk of a Solo K. Do a Solo K. If you don't have employees yet, so you got your business that you already set up, that you're already operating, that you want to fund, right? Do a Solo 401k in that new business. Roll over other retirement plan funds you have. Let's say you have some in an IRA somewhere else or an old employer 401k. Roll that into your new Solo K. In a Solo 401k and in all 401ks, there's an option where you can loan yourself money out of the 401k. You can loan yourself half the money of your own 401k, not to exceed 50 grand. So if you have $80,000, let's say in an old IRA or 401k that you can roll into your new Solo K, you can loan yourself half the balance of that 80, not to exceed 50. So in this case, you just loan out 40 and you have to pay it back to your 401k over 5 years. But you get 40,000 out. And now you can use this 40 to essentially fund your business. You could use it to pay off high interest debt. You could put it into the business, use it for education expenses, whatever the heck you want. But it's not a distribution, it's a loan out, and you can use it to fund your business. That's probably your best option if you do have retirement plan money you're trying to get into your business. Do a Solo K and do the loan. It only can get you 50,000 max, but it's something.
Great, thank you. So Anne has been using a self-directed Roth IRA for several years to help local artists go out buy its property and to help an eco-housing community get a construction loan. Yay, Anne, thank you. For others making low return rate values-based investments like this, what should we look for in terms of fee structures that lead us to use particular trustees or custodians?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, fees, you want to look, I don't know. Fees are tricky, I'll say, because different custodians have different structures. So let me just break it down because different fee structures work for different customers. Some custodians charge you on how big your account is. Because they're like, if you have a bigger account, we have to do more stuff to it. And so they'll have just an asset value fee for your account. That's like Equity Trust, who's one of the bigger players, for example, or Penso Trust. That's what they do. If you have a small account, you're probably pretty good there. If your account's over 100 grand or 200 grand though, you're probably paying more than average though. So, but those places, you can make as many investments as you want. but it's based on account size. Other custodians, which are more of our model, here's a fee, it's a flat fee, ours is $350. We do have a preferred organization rate of $250 that we might do. If you guys are interested, we can talk about, but it's just a low flat fee. Now, every additional investment you make though, you'll have an additional investment fee, maybe $100, $150. So the more investments you have, the more work and processing we're doing. So your fee kind of goes up. But if you have a $500,000 account and you just make one investment, then it's still $350. So whereas some custodians that might be $1,000, but so you want to look at what your account size is and how many transactions you want to make. Those are the two things to make sure you're not overpaying in fees. But also I'll say this, look at our reviews on Google, look at our competitors' reviews. Sometimes you get what you pay for.
Great, thank you. And we are just about at time, but I'm wondering, and this is a bit of a rogue move on my part, but I'm wondering, Janelle and Sue, if either of you would want to share a little bit about how we can continue this discourse on thenextday.org, maybe by doing a screen share or even just verbally saying like where people can post more questions or discussion topics. We really want to stimulate the continued conversation there. And just Matt.
I'm actually just going to stop the share there because I know the rest of the webinar is more so about the platform as it was at that point. So we've got about 13 good minutes for some Q&A here. So why don't we open it up? I know Heather and Hannah had a question about where the next egg is right now, Lyft's role. Happy to go over that. But does anybody have any other pressing questions before I dive into that part of the conversation?
Nope.
Okay. So I shared a few slides with y'all. Here, I can just copy and paste so it's most recent in the chat. And I'm going to pause the recording here because we have talked about this before.
Very helpful. When was this presentation? I think I missed it because I probably would have joined.
Yeah, no worries. I think we hosted this AMA. Trying to remember. It must have been in October, I want to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
okay.
but I can share if you'd
Is
like.
there a replay on the Next Egg website?
Yeah, so there's definitely something on the platform. Yeah, sorry. So this was hosted on Wednesday, October 11th.
Okay.
And there is a recording of it on the platform, and I can also email you one, whichever you would prefer. But yeah, you can watch that whole conversation there.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
And I guess I'm really interested in I guess the conversation about how it's going to continue and where we could find support from, because I would really like to see it continue. So I don't know if there are going to be any like community-wide conversations on that coming up, but if there were, I'd be interested in participating.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear that. No, there definitely will be. And I think right now we're trying to get through the end of the year and focus on some of the opportunities that we have available. And because I'm sort of consulting with Lyft, I've been encouraging them to think through like what a strategy with membership looks like in terms of having those conversations. So hopefully something like that will unfold come January. So right now I would just say stay tuned. I am also interested in having those conversations. So we'll kind of see. And I'll just mention that Aaron Axelrod, who's who's a partner owner at Lyft and one of the kind of people in charge of the Next Egg, is currently on parental leave, but she'll be back in January. So I also imagine having a little more staffing capacity will help us in kind of navigating some of those more strategic questions and conversations as well.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So Hannah, I just saw this. Heather, do you feel comfortable sharing some of what you said around potential privacy issues with solo 401ks?
Yes, sure. So, sorry, I just printed out something, so there might be a little bit of background noise. I'm just kind of remembering sort of all the things that came to my mind when I was considering, 401 solo and 401k versus IRA options. And 401ks have to file every year a document called a 5500, and so that's, I forget all the information's on it, but it's basically your plan's information, I believe financial information, as well as your, I forget what all the information is out there. Now, apparently there's an easy version that is not public, apparently. So if you're a small 401k, then you fall under that. But if you're above a certain amount, you have to file a full 5500, and that is definitely publicly available to anybody who wants to see all the information. So, I think, and one thought is, well, if it's just a 550 EZ, I just have a small plan, it's no big deal, but just kind of following, I have some experience a little bit with like these types of plans and the laws surrounding them, and they change over time. So Congress could decide, they want to change the rules, and now everybody who has a 401k has to file a full publicly viewed 550. So the rules can change over time is part of what's complicated about these. I'm not trying to discourage investment in them or using these vehicles. I used to have a job where it was my job to understand all the stickiness of these types of things and what could go wrong. So, so it's just good to know and to face that risk and know maybe it's a small risk. Do I care? Do I not care? And am I ready to go forward? Just knowing that, these things could happen or not happen. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thanks. I just chatted in, based on Matt's slides, it sounded like that form, the 5500, is only required if you're above a certain threshold in the solo 401k. And so I'm wondering, like, if the same level of privacy issue applies depending on how big that account would be. But it's helpful just to know that exists.
Yes, that's my understanding. Is it is based on level of assets currently, but like I said, they could change that number. They could drop the number, and then you have to file the full version, or they can make them all public. That these laws surrounding these programs are really subject to each Congress's decision about what they want to do. And I know that these types of plans get a lot of attention, and whether or not they should exist, and if people should have these benefits. So it's just one factor to just be aware of, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm reminded of something that Janelle has said many times, is like the law is sometimes not great at discerning between like a good, self-directed retirement savings account and like a well-intentioned one and a not well-intentioned one, right? Like I'm thinking about some of these, like the self-dealing clause feels so crummy for someone who's trying to like invest in a solar cooperative, like I mentioned earlier. But then on the other hand, like, yeah, you probably want to have those laws so people aren't like giving money to their own self or their grandchildren or something like that. So yeah, it's definitely something, not being a legal professional, I think it's something I've kind of learned as I've worked on this project. All right, well, that brings us right to 11 a.m. And I was thinking, I know I need to use the restroom, and I imagine other people need to take a bio break. So maybe let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we'll start back up again 10 after the hour, and we'll be talking about SDIRAs as well as SDIRA custodians in more specific detail. Sound like a plan? All right, let me pause the recording. Okay, so at this point, we're in session 2 of our day-long conference on self-directed retirement savings. This morning, we talked through the different options with Matt Sorensen, a webinar he hosted several years ago at this point, talking through the kind of basics of self-directed IRAs and solo 401ks. And over the next, I would say, hour, we're going to go through more in detail about SDIRAs and SDIRA custodians. And then we're actually going to take a break for lunch. Thank you, Heather, for that recommendation. When I planned this, I was like, oh yeah, I don't need to eat lunch, whatever. But now I'm looking forward to that. And then at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have a full hour with Laura Aldani, who herself has a self-directed IRA. So you're able to ask any of your specific burning questions to her. And then we'll finish out the day talking through solo 401ks and go through a plan document. So that's just a snapshot of where we are in the day. And before we get started, are there any questions or comments or anything? Okay, then I am going to share my screen. And this first session was initially hosted on October 16th of 2020. And this will be an overview of self-directed IRAs. Here we go. I'm going to do the same speed thing I did last time. Okay, let's go for it.
We're going. So in case you don't know, we're covering self-directed IRAs today in this eggshell. We'll post a link to the new Zoom room in case there's a Zoom emergency. And the slide deck and video recording will be uploaded also to the NextEgg platform in the next week. The NextEgg is a project of Lift Economy, Sustainable Economies Law Center, and Michael Schuman. And if you want to invite your friends to it, you can share the nextegg.org and my email address if folks can't afford the $10 a month. We're always going to disclaim what we're not and invite what we are. So we're not a broker or financial advisor, and you're not going to get legal advice today. And for the purposes of our conversation about self-directed IRAs, this is just a reminder that we're not going to provide a comprehensive list of considerations when it comes to these retirement plans.
Valeria, I know that you have slides connected to what you're saying, but we're not seeing them yet.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, have you been advancing the slides?
I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Does this work now?
Yeah, I'm seeing it now.
Thank you so much. Okay. So we'll have 20 minutes of presentation followed by 10 minutes of discussion and Q&A. So if you do have questions that arise, please save them for the end. I won't be able to manage all of the buttons that are involved. So, self-directed IRAs. These are self-directed, but why does this matter? Many reasons, but if you're part of the NextEgg, it's likely because you want to divest from Wall Street and reinvest into community. And we found at the NextEgg, the best way to do this is to have control over how the money that you have in your retirement plan is indeed invested. So whether it's to stop funding the catastrophic destruction of our planet by divesting from fossil fuels or supporting friends and family with personal.
Whoops, I just realized that our recording is still on, and I'm going to pause it. So for those who are just tuning in, we're watching the In an Eggshell Self-Directed IRAs webinar that was originally hosted on October 16th, 2020. We're at minute 18 with 14 seconds in, and the question was asked by a participant about, they were trying to work with us, SDIRA custodian, and they said something about how whatever you're investing in, if it's a fund specifically, that fund needs to offer quarterly interest in order for you to invest in it with your IRA. So at this point in the Next Egg's history, we hadn't gotten into the weeds of this, but I want to say all retirement savings options have this requirement called a liquidity requirement. So basically what that means is that any money that you have in a retirement savings account needs to be liquid, in the sense that you can pull it out of whatever investments you have at any given moment. And the intention behind that is like, let's say you have an emergency of some kind. Some of that money can't be locked away. You need to be able to have access to it more immediately, which is why this liquidity requirement exists. Now, the challenge for us is that if you're trying to offer more patient capital to, let's say, new and next economy projects, right? So smaller businesses or, multi-stakeholder cooperatives, or just, groups that are really just trying to get off the ground, mandating that kind of liquidity requirement from your investments can be just not great for the people and communities in whom you're investing. So that is something we're still trying to figure out how to navigate. For those who are interested, there's a really great webinar. Let me see if I can find the link real quick. But Rob Thomas from an organization called Social K worked with us. We co-hosted a webinar with Rob. Here's the link to that one, on employee self-directed retirement plans. And Rob has this idea for what is called a community investment trust, which is basically like a hybrid model where some of the investments an organization is making do make that liquidity requirement or do abide by that requirement, and whereas the other ones are a lot more patient and don't have to be liquid. So if you're interested in learning more about that particular idea, I would definitely watch that webinar. And Rob himself is super accessible. His company is called Social K. You're welcome to reach out to him directly or go through the organization's website, which I can also find and share right now. So just wanted to throw that in as some additional context before we move forward. Any questions from this group at this point? All right. So many buttons to remember. Okay, sorry about that. So that was the overview of SDIRAs. I shared a few resources in the chat along with the slide deck. For that particular one, there's a treasure trove of information there, and we also have a comparative sheet that was co-created by NextEgg members of a handful of SDIRA custodians. So if you're interested in going down that path, it's worth taking a look at the spreadsheet to just see like, oh, what questions should I ask? What are my options? But then also look through some of those slides and some of that content. So at this point, let's see, we have about 15 minutes until lunch, and the next webinar that I wanted to show was specific to SDIRA custodians. So we could do one of two things. We could start the webinar now, and then just break at noon for lunch, or we could break for lunch now and then come back maybe at 12:45, start the webinar then, and then just finish it after we chat with Laura. What would folks prefer? Again, there we go. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back from lunch. I hope you had something yummy. And for our West Coast friends, I hope you had a nice spacious late breakfast. And yeah, so for folks who are just joining, we've had some conversations this morning going over some of the basics of self-directed retirement savings. And so we talked loosely about SDIRAs, so that's self-directed individual retirement accounts, as well as solo 401ks. After this kind of session, we'll dive deeper into solo 401ks and talk a little bit more about SDIRA custodians. But for the next hour, we are very blessed to have Laura here today. I'll let you introduce yourself in full, but I know that Laura's been a part of the Next Egg since almost its very inception, yeah? Yeah, and she's done her own self-directed retirement savings structure and is just like a treasure trove of information. So I'll pass it over to Laura to introduce herself and give us a little bit more context about her journey. And then we'll really just open the floor up for some Q&A. Does that sound like a plan?
Yep.
All right, take it away, Laura.
So hello, everyone. My name is Laura Oldaney, and I am the founder of Rich and Resilient Living. And as of last year, I am co-author of this book, Growing Free. And for us, the free stands for financially resilient and economically empowered. And our subtitle is Building the Life of Your Dreams Without Losing Your Soul or Destroying the Planet, which I think is what we're all trying to do here in the Next Egg. And for me, this journey really started in terms of aligning my money with my values. You know, it has started as soon, initially when I even first started thinking about investing in my 20s and 30s, I was never really comfortable with the options in the stock market. That was all I knew. It was all the people around me knew and were talking about. And as the years progressed, it felt like the financially prudent thing to do was to be investing some of my income in retirement and some kind of retirement savings account. But as I got more interested in the environment and sustainability and social justice, even moving my money into the socially responsible funds was still keeping my money supporting all the things you guys don't like either, the sugary beverages and single-use plastics, big pharma, financial institutions with predatory lending practices. And so it was like, okay, if even those socially conscious options that Wall Street has aren't aligned with my values, what else is there? And about the time that I started questioning that, I also discovered permaculture. So I imagine a few of you on the call are familiar with permaculture. And if not, there are so many ways to define permaculture. Most people think it's something you apply in your landscape to have food forests and swales and straw bale homes, but it's so much more than that. It is this regenerative design toolkit that looks to nature's abundance-based, no-waste, closed-loop system as the model for designing, and we can apply it to all aspects of our lives. And so, like I said, I discovered permaculture at about the same time I discovered Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez's book, Your Money or Your Life. And I was introduced to the FIRE community, the Financial Independence Retire Early community. And I really liked the idea of FIRE, but everyone was doing it by investing in the stock market. In Vanguard funds and all of those things that didn't feel good, or in predatory, real estate portfolios that are exacerbating local housing, affordable housing issues. So it just became a journey when I got to permaculture. It was like, what are the wealth building tools within permaculture? How do I meld permaculture? I want permaculture FIRE, which basically for us is what free is. It is the permaculture version of FIRE because there is such a rich wealth building toolkit in FIRE. And as I went on the journey, I started learning about slow money. I had known slow food. I found slow money. I started reading books like Locavesting by Amy Cortez. Those early pieces that I could pull together. And I eventually ended up house sitting out in San Francisco. and ended up at a Slow Money meeting. And it was there that I learned that the way that the many of the members of the Northern California Slow Money chapter were able to invest outside of the stock market in line with their values was by opening self-directed IRAs. And that was my big aha moment, was to even learn that an account like this existed. I had never heard of any such thing. So I wasn't able to do anything with that information right then, which was, it is a good thing because there's a lot to absorb with self-directed IRAs. So I continued, finding things, just researching online and reading books about socially conscious investing outside of the stock market. And at the time I discovered or learned about the self-directed IRAs, I was a nomad. I was traveling around the country just trying to figure out where I wanted to settle again. And once I did finally settle back here, I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida, I started getting more serious about moving my money out of my employer-based retirement account into some place where I could start putting it to work, supporting more of what I wanted to support. And it happens that one of the custodian companies, the self-directed retirement account custodian companies, is headquartered here in my area. I mean, there are many of them, but and they had good reviews. I didn't, online, and I was able to go in and meet them in person. So it felt like, wow, I could actually, even incorporate that desire to keep my money local into the custodian company that I hired. And and that company is Advanta, if anyone wants to know, ADVANTA, Advanta IRA. So I don't think that any of the custodian companies that we can work with to date with our self-directed IRAs or solo 401ks are socially conscious at all. They are, from my experience and knowledge, they're all very much conventionally minded. So I think that's a niche waiting to be filled, is for someone to open a self-directed retirement account custodian company that wants to be supporting people that are pursuing this for more socially conscious reasons and the things that we want to and need to be thinking about. But saying that, the customer service at Advanta I have found to be very, very good. I have not had to push them, in a lot of ways because of the structure that I have set my IRA up in. So I kind of have gone in a tangent already, but all that to say that I went down this journey, this hole of trying to create permaculture fire or free. And so it led me to move my money and then realize that another big part of putting my money into these investments that that are conventionally considered riskier, even if I weren't moving my money off of Wall Street, I think at this point, permaculture really helped me see that investing isn't only about money. Even the money that I'm investing through my self-directed retirement account, it is much more about lifestyle design and designing for, using the multiple forms of capital, not only financial capital, but, natural capital, social capital, and building in all of those supports. But it was because I moved my money off of Wall Street and found permaculture that I really started thinking more about how do we reimagine wealth and retirement planning. And that's a lot of the value I have found through the Next Egg. So that's a good bit right there to start with. I can pause. I can say more if people have specific questions. Oh, I will say, let me go in so just so people know to what I can best speak to, and I am not an expert by any means. I actually feel like I probably would have been better off waiting another year or two before I opened my self-directed IRA and did a little more research. I'm just one of those people who has always landed on her feet, and I still will. So I did it because it was that money on Wall Street was weighing me down so much that I wanted to get it out. And what I have done is, so we have the self-directed IRAs and we have the solo 401ks. I have a self-directed IRA. And within the self-directed IRA, you have, I guess for lack of a better term, what I'll call a traditional or conventional self-directed IRA, where you work with the custodian company and every investment that you want to make has to be approved and facilitated by your custodian company. And you pay that custodian company a fee for each of those investments and services that they provide you. You know, if you want to make that investment, if you want to change that investment, you know, you have to pay fees. And I knew that my risk mitigation strategy going into this was going to be to make many small investments. And I didn't want to have to get them all approved because that can be time consuming by the custodian company. And I definitely didn't want to have to be paying all of those fees for each of the individual investments that I knew I was going to make. So I have created what is called a checkbook LLC. So there's the conventional self-directed IRA where you pay those fees to the custodian company and have a lot of interaction with them. And then there's option B, which is what I have, which is the checkbook LLC, where you form an LLC, you spend the money up front. I think I spent $700 to work with a lawyer to draw up the paperwork. And every year I spend $135 to keep my LLC legally registered in the state of Florida. The $700 with the lawyer was only a one-time fee, but I do have to pay annual registration fees for my LLC. But that was felt like a way that it would be more seamless. I have a check. It literally is a checkbook LLC. I write the checks. My custodian company doesn't write them and mail them for me. I handle all of it. I handle all of the, you know, the paperwork and just the filing and administrative side of it. But for me, that was the way that I could keep it more affordable. Now, in hindsight, again, I think I would have waited a little longer, maybe to learn a little more. And I know, Heather, you mentioned the possibility of a solo 401k. These things are so complex, these self-directed IRAs. There are so many rules and regulations around them. I don't know for sure if I could have done this, but if I could have moved, I had an employer-based retirement account with TIAA. And in hindsight, now that I work for myself, what I would have done if I could have is moved that money into a solo 401k instead of a self-directed IRA. I think solo 401ks are slightly less complex and complicated with fewer restrictions. And so yes, I would definitely, if you're considering a solo 401k, look at that more closely, because I do feel like it's not as cumbersome as a self-directed IRA. I think I've put myself into a more cumbersome situation.
Well, I feel like I have a million questions, Laura, but thank you for giving us that helpful intro and talking us through even just like what your intentions were when you first started on this journey. I'm sure folks have a lot of questions about mechanics and kind of what your experience has looked like in detail. So yeah, why don't we just open it up? I have a couple of questions, but we'll defer to participants, and then we can just kind of go around.
I'll
Hi,
just
Laura.
throw out this.
Oh, go ahead, Heather.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, is that me? Sorry, I didn't hear you. I think I talked over you. Okay, I'll go ahead. Thank you. Hi, Laura. Thank you for being here. My question was, I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to any challenges or friction that you encountered during your setup process.
The friction setting it up wasn't horrible. You know, my Advanta had a list of company or lawyers and accountants to work with, like lawyers in the area that were familiar with creating the LLC paperwork. And the Advanta process for opening the account was pretty streamlined, and it was, like I said, you know, they're here locally, so I went into the office, scheduled an appointment. You know, they actually, you know, called my TIAA, as I said, that's where my accounts were, with me in the room, and handled the paperwork of moving the money, you know, and all that needed to be done. And then so setting up the account was pretty easy. And then, like I said, they were able to direct me to a lawyer that could help me with the paperwork here in the state of Florida. So the technicalities weren't that hard. Learning about it and understanding it and speaking the language is hard. You know, there's so much technical lingo and all these technical things and differences to understand. So I hope that answers your question, Hannah.
I'm wondering, Hannah, I know this wasn't a part of your question, but for folks who are watching this recording later, and I imagine some folks here, Laura, can you, so I heard you say you had money in an account with TIAA as a result of, I think you said it was an employer-based account. And then it sounds like you rolled, I assume, all of that money over into a self-directed IRA with a custodian. Can you just walk us through what that process actually looked like? And if you feel comfortable sharing, like, how much of that money did you roll over? What does your portfolio look like right now? I think some of those nuances might be helpful for folks.
Okay, sure. And I do want to say one more thing to Hannah's question that I realized. Working with that lawyer, the lawyer the first time also filed the LLC registration papers for me. That was included in his fee for writing up, you know, the documents, but he also submitted the registration for the LLC the first time. Now it's on me every year, but it's very simple to go online to the state entity here in Florida to pay, you know, file the annual report. It's just like click, yes. You know, I didn't change my address. It's still me. And here's my, well, I'll mail my check for $135 or whatever it is. So yes, back to this latest question. When I opened my self-directed IRA, I didn't move everything that was in it, because I had not only a traditional IRA with Advanta, I also had a Roth IRA. And that would have involved a second account, you know, creating a Roth IRA with Advanta as well, which would have been more fees. And I didn't know, I wasn't confident enough in if that, because at some point there's a question of when is it even financially worth it to have a self-directed IRA, because we're looking at $200, $300, $400 in fees annually just to maintain the account. You know, so if you're not getting a rate of return that is at least covering having those, you know, the fees you're paying, then what's the point? And so what I had left in that self-directed IRA didn't feel like enough to warrant moving it over when I still was so fresh and new to figuring out what to do with the money I was putting in the self-directed IRA. So that money in the Roth IRA that I didn't move, that was probably, you know, about 25% of my retirement savings. And finally, just last year, I moved that money out of TIAA and into a CD IRA with a credit union here in my area. So I still have, you know, like maybe 2 to 5% of my retirement savings with TIAA that's in a kind of annuity that I can't get it out of, you know, so there, that's how it's all divided. So I started this process, I think it was 2017 when I opened the self-directed IRA. And like I said, it was about 75% of my retirement savings, everything that was in that traditional IRA with TIAA, I moved. And as I mentioned, I really was fortunate that I live so close to the company, the custodian company. I called them, they said, you know, come on up, you know, bring such and such documents and account numbers, and we'll fill out the paperwork with you, and we will call TIAA while you're in the room. So that, you know, I went in, we did that. That was just one, you know, like an hour or two at their office. Then it, you know, the account was created, but because I wanted to do the checkbook LLC, it was on me to, you know, take a little bit of time to do that next part and work with that list they had and find a lawyer that would work with me. And I mean, there were probably 3 or 4 lawyers on that list, and one of them felt a little scammy and not who I wanted to work with. But then there was one that, you know, at least seemed decent, and I felt more aligned with him, and he was happy to work with me. And like I said, it was it cost about $700, $800 to have him write up the paperwork. I mean, you can do that yourself. I wasn't confident enough to do it, so I spent the money on the lawyer to come, you know, create those forms and establish that LLC for me the first time. And then once that I had that established, I had all that paperwork, I could go, I went to a bank. So I went to my credit union because I'm the banker. Like I said, I write the checks because I've now got an investing LLC through my self-directed IRA. So I went to my credit union because, again, I wanted to bank with an ethical bank that was, or a more ethical bank that was going to keep my money, keeps my money in the community. And so now I have a checkbook, and I, you know, it says the name of my little investing LLC. And every time I make an investment, I write the check. So I, you know, I find that many of the entities that I'm investing in, even though some of them, when they know self-directed IRAs, they don't understand checkbook LLCs. So I have to be very clear with them that I need this investment to be affiliated with my investing corporation, and the tax, I have an EIN number, you know, a corporate tax number. So I need my investments to be affiliated with that number and not my social security number, because that could cause my my whole self-directed retirement account to be, I forget what the legal term of it is, but you can like actually cancel out your account and make it invalid, and then I would have to pay the taxes on all of my investments and deal with, it would be a nightmare. It's not just the taxes, it's then that all of those investments are in the name of my corporation, and it would just be, this is the legal nightmare that awaits. That's why I would love to see, again, someone come into this niche of being a self-directed retirement account custodian that wanted to work with the nuances of being a socially conscious investor, because it is such a complex thing.
Thank you so much. That was so helpful. And I just had a quick follow-up. What is the difference between like a CD and I think you said a CD IRA?
So a CD is just, anyone can open a CD outside of an IRA. And then if you go into a bank today and open a CD as an individual, you know, just you, not related to an IRA, then you are paying the taxes on it annually, you know, it's part of your income that you file on your annual income taxes. If you're opening a CD IRA, it is a tax deferred advantage, just like investment. So you're not paying those taxes annually, you pay the taxes on it when you take it out later in retirement.
Thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
Other questions?
I have a number of questions just to see, generally speaking, what I've understood from like the various conversations today. So, Laura, one of the things I heard you say was how you would have had to create a separate self-directed IRA for your Roth IRA. Does that mean essentially if you have like a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, those have to be pulled into separate accounts?
That is my understanding, yes, because they are two, one is tax advantaged. I mean, they're both tax advantaged, but one is tax deferred, you know, and one is you're paying the taxes up front. So yes, you can't commingle those funds.
So does essentially, do you have like the same options for a self-directed IRA to choose whether it's traditional or Roth when you are like setting up the account, or how does that kind of like?
Yes, you do. You can choose. And again, you can have both of them, but then you're paying double the fees. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah.
you pay an administrative fee each year to these custodian companies. So you would have to pay those administrative fees every year, one for the Roth and one for the more, you know, the conventional self-directed IRA, traditional self-directed IRA.
Okay. And then I just learned about the existence of solo 401ks this morning, so that's like all new. And I guess my question is, I have many questions about this and I don't necessarily know how to articulate them. I guess one, my understanding is that solo 401ks are for individuals who are self-employed. That's like people that have like a traditional employer, which is, are they generally ineligible for them?
That is, so again, I don't have one, and this is where I am.
Yeah.
I'm not even an expert in self-directed IRAs. This is, please, let's put the disclaimer out there. This is all for educational, informational, and maybe even entertainment purposes only. This is my lived experience with it all. My understanding with the solo 401k, yes, is that it can't come from like employment, you working for others, you know, having an, you know, it has to be based on money you earn from a business that you have. And I don't know if you were on the call when I said it earlier, but if I were to do this again and it were possible to move the money I had from an employer-based account into a solo 401k, which I don't know if that is possible, that's what I wish I would have done.
Rudy, is the thumbs up as in it's not?
Yeah, so when you first open a solo 401k account, within the first year of it, I believe, you are allowed to roll over any existing retirement savings you have from an employer account. And that initial rollover doesn't count towards your annual $19,000 contribution cap. So that's one thing. And then, yeah, so solo 401ks are only eligible. You can only be eligible for one if you have 1099 income, which means you own some kind of business. You are the only employee of that business. It could be an LLC, a sole proprietorship, whatever. And because that would essentially mean that this is like your employer-based account. So it's like your business has the solo 401k, and then you can make a contribution. And then there are all sorts of rules about like the employer match contribution, but it's basically on average about 25% of whatever annual income you're making from that business can be like the employer match. And this morning we had a really helpful slide deck from Matt Sorensen, who hosted a webinar about this. So I can share that on the platform as well. And no, there is no minimum that is mandated. I think the general advice, or I guess we can't use the word advice, can we? The general understanding is that there are, in the same way that there are fees involved with working with an SDIRA custodian, there are fees involved with opening up a solo 401k. So I think as an individual, you have to do the like cost benefit analysis of like, if I'm only making like $2,000 a year from self-employment income, is that really worth the fees that I'm going to have to pay just to get a solo 401k set up? And in some past webinars, particularly related to the first hatch, which was like a cohort-based model for the Next Egg many years ago, they talk a little bit about the fees of opening up a solo 401k. So I can share some of those details with you, Jenilyn, too, if you're interested in learning more. Yeah, can do that.
Awesome. And like I said, I don't know if everyone heard it. If I were to do this again, yeah, I would go the solo 401k route, because my understanding is it's a lot less cumbersome.
Laura,
Yes.
did you say it's a lot less cumbersome? Can you be more explicit? Like, what is more cumbersome or less cumbersome? Thanks.
I think because number one, like I said before, like most of the entities that I'm investing in don't even know what, like if I mention that I'm investing through an IRA, they think it's like they don't understand the checkbook LLC part, so they want to affiliate it, the investment, with my social security number, and I have to go, back and forth again and double check and keep letting them know, no, this has to be with the LLC. It has to be with the LLC's EIN number. That's one thing, just like the understanding people have out there, even where I'm making these investments. I think later on, it's going to be, well, and I don't know about this with the solo 401k, but another thing is, the annual registration for the LLC. I have to do that every year. I don't think you would have to do that with a solo 401k, and you still have more of the checkbook control with the solo 401k, is my understanding. Like, that's what I like about what I have, is that I don't have to go through the channels of having Advanta approve, research and approve or disprove, and say, no, that's not an investment that works for us. But then, yeah, so then writing the check is much easier because I can do that. Later on, I think, like having these investments connected to an LLC, if I moved once, and so then my LLC is just registered to my home address. So then I had to go through the hoops of, going back to these places where I'd invested. Some of them, not all of them, I don't think I've had to, but some of them, and I had to let them know, okay, no, I need you to officially change the address here that's connected with this and start mailing the dividend check to this new address. So it was just this other layer of complexity, and it was harder to do that because of, I had to change my LLC bylaws, for them to accept this new address. It just, having an LLC added that layer of complication. I think that, I don't know how this works with solo 401ks. I think the end game for these, the drawdown strategy or end game for self-directed accounts, especially when I've done it this way with the checkbook LLC, when you start taking withdrawals, when you get to that point where you're like, I think now the US government is changing the age to like 71, 72, 73, where you have to take a required minimum withdrawal. So in order to be able to do that, someone has to, a professional with the knowledge to be able to, I guess, confer opinion on this, being an accountant or, someone has to verify, say, okay, this is the fair market value of this retirement account. And this is every year. Every year you want to take a required minimum distribution. Someone with financial knowledge that is, not actually approved, but considered a financial professional, has to sign off and say, this is, this is the fair market value of this whole portfolio. And that's pretty hard to establish when you've got your money in these more random, less easily determined value businesses with values that are less easily determined, with startups, you know, where like, okay, what's the value of this startup? And so it's just, yeah, all of those little things really are going to add up, and they already have. Like I said, it's just there's a lot of administrative work to it.
I'm just going to jump in real quick and remind us that we have about 20 minutes left with Laura, and I feel like I could ask a million more questions about the mechanics of an SDIRA, which, by the way, you can always ask me. You can message on the platform. There are other folks who also have expertise. So I just want to transition us, Laura. I feel like one of the questions we get a lot from the broader NextEd community is like, okay, once I set up this thing, how do I do local investing? And I'm wondering if you can talk us through, even if you want to give us examples of some of the investments you've made through this LLC, and how, you know, kind of due diligence worked for that. Were there any barriers you encountered? I think kind of understanding that like second half of the experience would be helpful for the folks who are going to watch this recording later. So just wanted to open up that can of worms, maybe.
Sure. Well, for local investing, it's been just a process of having conversations with people, letting it be known that I was interested in this. Yeah, and I still am not where I would like to be with local investing. I bought 10 copies of Michael Schumann's book, Put Your Money Where Your Life Is, and gifted them to our economic development director here in my town, to the head of the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, unfortunately, that all unfolded during COVID, when, you know, I was leaving books at people's offices and they weren't even there. So I'm trying to get a local investing club going here, or some kind of entity like Lions that they have in Washington, or a slow money chapter, but that is a really heavy lift. And I don't have a finance or banking or legal or, you know, even really an investing background. But I talk about it a lot, and it's mostly come what I've done through my local permaculture connections. We have a farm here in Tampa Bay called Sweetwater, and it's the longest operating organic farm in the area. And when it's run by a nonprofit, and the nonprofit leaders, as lovely people as they are, they didn't do a great job in stewarding it, you know, financially. And so a friend of mine who I knew through the permaculture sustainable living space here, who's also had real estate investing experience, stepped up and got people to make 0 and low interest loans to him. And he and his partner then took over the farm, you know. And so that was one of the local loans that I made, was to someone I knew who was saving our farm, and that loan was paid back in full. You know, we have a permaculture farm about 60 miles away from us that has an interesting ownership model. And so my boyfriend and I bought a share and split the share of this 10-acre permaculture farm. That's one of the local investments I've made. I have a friend that has started a moringa collective business. And so I've taken a chance and put some money into that. So that's how I've done it locally. And then the rest of it, the majority of it, though, I haven't invested locally. I mean, I did put some money in a CD as well, separate from the Roth IRA CD I mentioned, but within this LLC, I put some of the money from my self-directed IRA LLC into a CD at a credit union. And then, you know, I've made other investments that I've learned about online through NextEd, or other people or books on socially conscious investing.
Thank you. And I'm just curious, one of the things that we reviewed this morning were the self-dealing type of prohibited transaction, as well as there have been some questions around the liquidity requirements of a retirement account. And I'm wondering how you're navigating some of those complexities, or if they even apply to the type of self-direction that you're doing with your retirement savings.
So for the self-dealing, I am very conscious of that. I mean, I think the closest I come to, I'm not investing in myself, I'm not buying properties and then living in them myself. I'm not investing in family members. If I ate some of my friend's moringa, would I be breaking the law? If he gave it to me for free, yes. Probably technically. That hasn't happened yet. I mean, would I do it? Probably, because I'm a little bit of a rebel. The permaculture farm is probably the biggest one where there's, opportunity for me to, get involved in self-dealing if I ever wanted to spend the night there for free, or, take a free plant home. Those are choices we all have to make. What are you comfortable with? Where are you going to say enough is enough? This is BS, or, okay, I'm not comfortable with it. I'm happy I'm investing here, and, I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah. No, I definitely, we were talking about this earlier, because I feel like the example I always remember from Janelle around the self-dealing thing being an issue is she was saying, like, let's say I want to invest in my local solar power cooperative. But because that cooperative is servicing my zip code, let's say, then technically that's self-dealing. But it's kind of stupid, because if you're trying to put your money where your life is, then it feels like you're always going to be like hitting that barrier. So I think for the sake of my own self and kind of thinking about how to navigate this, but also for the folks in this room and folks who will be listening, I think it just sounds like it's a very nuanced thing, and something that we probably all have to risk a little bit if we want to go down this particular route and this particular structure that you've spoken to. Is that?
Yes, well, with the Republicans wanting to defund the IRS, there may be options to potential to have a lot less follow-up on our investing.
Yeah.
Sadly. But
yes.
That's the other thing, Janelle, I think, has made the point about why even invest through these tax deferred accounts. They in their own way are, don't level the playing field. And I can see that. And if I were to do this over again, like I said, I think I would do a solo 401k, but I could also see the logic now of just taking the hit and paying the income taxes on the money and just taking it all out and doing it outside of a tax deferred account. And then, you take the tax hit when you take the money out of the original retirement account, and you then incur the tax hit each year as you invest the money, because then it's income tax that you're paying. But I think that, that's something for people to consider too, especially if that really strikes a chord for them, that even investing through tax advantaged accounts doesn't help level the playing field.
Right.
Completely.
And did you have any thoughts on the question around liquidity requirements? Is that something you've confronted?
No, actually, that's one I have not even given much thought to. I will admit, I don't know what the liquidity requirements are. I may be breaching them in my account right now.
Yeah, I've only heard about them once or twice, and I don't even know if I have the full picture of it. But my understanding is that there is some percentage of your retirement account that needs to be liquid, so that if there's any sort of emergency and you need to borrow the money, there is some there for you to be able to take a distribution.
Hmm.
I think where we run into a challenge as, you know, socially minded investors, or however you want to categorize our community, is that, like, you know, especially considering like the loans that you've given out or investing in newer businesses, like your friends, that's not great for the folks you're investing in if you're trying to keep things liquid, right? Because they need patient capital, they need stuff that they can kind of money that they can work with that you don't need back at the drop of a hat. So I think that's something that I'm still kind of learning about, but I think I want to talk to Janelle and also some of the folks at Selk to see, like, does this apply to all the accounts? Is it a general thing? How often is the IRS like checking on things like that? You know what I mean? I think, but I had heard about it, and I didn't know if you had confronted that in your own investing journey.
Well, as you pursue that, I think what would be also helpful to add to that is what qualifies as a liquid form of, you know, investment or
Right.
money in the account. You know, I think that I would meet that requirement. I suspect CDs are pretty liquid in the end.
Mhm.
You know, and I do keep a decent cash cushion. You know, we're talking about a retirement account that I rolled over. You know, I'm not wealthy, but I had enough to leave a little bit of cushion in the bank account, just
Right.
because I know that I have fees that come up every year, you know, that I have to pay. So
Right. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So we've got about 7 more minutes. Other questions from folks in the room for Laura? Heather, did you have a question earlier? I feel like you might have unmuted yourself, but now I cannot remember.
Yes, but I think they were covered by the remaining questions.
Okay. Well then maybe I can just bring it home with a final question for you, Laura. I think something that I personally struggle with and have heard from a lot of Next Egg members is, like, so much of this work has to do with positionality, honestly, like where you are in this playing field, whether or not you have access to generational wealth, what your racial background is and what implications that has for your finances. And also just more broadly, like what your tolerance is for risk when it comes to thinking about your retirement savings. I think where what I run into often, just like in my own kind of mental journey, is like, yeah, obviously I would love to live in a world where a social safety net like doesn't require hoarding money away until I'm 59 and a half or whatever the age is. But right now we don't necessarily have that. And I'm thinking, I live in Northwestern Indiana, and there's one co-op, for example, within, I want to say, like a 60 to 70 mile radius of where I live, and it's not even profitable. And so I think that's just like an example of how, like, different folks who live in different places and have different backgrounds have like varying levels of access to this kind of work. And I'm curious, like, how has your relationship to thinking about retirement and retirement savings changed over the past few years since 2017 when you started this journey? And what do you have to say to someone who, you know, has questions about risk and positionality in terms of thinking about saving for the future?
whew, there's a lot to cover there. Well, so I mentioned in the beginning about permaculture, and you know, I was part of the reparative retirement planning cohort. I don't know if you heard about that happened last year for a few months. Between permaculture and that cohort, you know, it really expanded my thinking, you know, as Aaron Axelrod talks a good bit about, you know, about reimagining retirement planning. And if I were going to start again, you know, from the when I was like 18 years old, or, when I first started opening a retirement account, I don't know if I would do that. I don't know if that's how I would build my wealth. In permaculture, you're looking to build these systems where it's like nature is growing wealthier through these synergistic interactions and relationships. And it's all these closed loop systems. And of all of my Growing Free co-authors, there are 5 of us. I think I'm the only one that grew free by ever investing any money in the stock market. I think that there are ways we can really shift our thinking and the way we design our lives and design for retirement. I think we move through life thinking about, okay, I just need to save money so I have it later when I want to retire, instead of moving through life like thinking about how you would design your life for retirement if you didn't have the money. We don't focus on our health. We want all this money to afford health care, but we don't design our lives to not need to spend money on health care. We don't design our lives to think about, I'm trying to start thinking about, can I build a second dwelling unit on my property so a caregiver can come and move in with me for free, because I don't want to end up in a facility. I have very little faith in our Western allopathic medical center, and those places look like hell to me. And so if I were going to start again, I would be thinking completely different about investing my money, investing in social capital, investing in living and natural capital, investing in intellectual capital, building multiple streams of income, maybe doing some investing outside of an account to make loans to regenerative farmers and things. But, I would like to invest in some kind of, cooperatively run a home care business, here in my community, where I knew people were really concerned about high quality care for people who are aging in place and weren't pressured by a for-profit medical system that just leads to the level of care being horrible. So.
No, I really appreciate those reflections. And I've noticed that, especially for the folks who are in that practice group, there's been this really deep, almost existential questioning of like, what the hell are we even saving for and like investing for and trying to get all these returns for? So I appreciate that kind of call to action, even if it's just like a degree by degree reorientation to how we want to think about living well into our elderhood. So thank you for that provocation to wrap our Q&A with you. And thanks for these 60 minutes. Oh my gosh, what a treasure trove of info that was.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this conversation. As I said, I always enjoy hanging out with the Next Egg crew. It's some of my favorite people to have conversations with, because it's all blurry and fuzzy and very well intended, but it's nice to have people to move through it with, because none of us have the blueprint figured out yet.
Definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
let me go ahead and pause the recording. Welcome back from our break. We've just had a really helpful conversation with Laura Aldani about her experience moving her money over into a self-directed IRA and LLC structure. So at this point in the day, we've got about 3 things left. We're gonna do a quick-ish session on self-directed IRA custodians, and then we'll jump into solo 401ks. Depending on who's in the room, we might go straight into what's the anatomy of a plan document, since the intro, the sort of summary of webinar for 401ks is a lot of that content was covered this morning. But again, it'll depend on who's in the room. And then we'll wrap up and have some time for Q&A and just kind of an open session to share reflections and things of the like. So before we dive into SDIRA custodians, are there any questions or reflections or things that folks want to share? Anything like that?
I was just gonna ask if it was possible to get links to the pre-recorded webinars that were played earlier today, because I talked to several other folks who wanted to attend, but just couldn't get off work right now. And so I
Yeah.
know they'd be super interested in watching them.
Yeah, so what I'll do is after this day-long conference, I'm going to post on the NextEgg platform with all of the links to everything we watched today, as well as summaries of resources from Laura's chat, slides from any of the webinars, and all of that good stuff. So there will be a summary post coming soon, and you can actually just share that directly with folks. You can screenshot it if they're not on the platform, all of that good stuff. But it will for sure be coming your way later this evening.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get into it. Let me pause this recording. All right, I see Emma, who has just joined. Welcome. We just finished up our webinar on self-directed IRA custodians. Before we move on and transition fully into solo 401k land, are there any questions or things that are coming up for anyone who is presently on the call? Good afternoon, Emma. Thanks for joining. All right, let me pause this for a second. All right, so for folks who are joining in from the recording, we are just about to dive into solo 401ks. We've decided to forego the primer for the purposes of our session synchronously, but I'll be sure to link that webinar in the notes, so be sure to check that out. But for the rest of our time, we're going to be focused on the plan document for a solo 401k. So, all right. And it sounds like most folks have to leave at 4, so we'll get through as much of it as we can. I think Jenny, you'll still be here, so you and I can finish it together. But again, the recordings and the actual hyperlinks will be shared afterwards. So let me go ahead and get that started. I just am noticing the time. So I think Emma and Hannah both have to jump in 10 minutes. And so I just wanted to create some space here for the two of you to offer any thoughts or reflections or ask any questions before you need to jump. And then Jenny, if you're sticking around, then you and I can finish the last, I think there's like 30 minutes left of the webinar that we can finish up. Yeah, Emma or Hannah, any thoughts that you want to share? Oh, Emma, I just see her.
Oh, yeah. Hannah, I know you were having audio issues, so if you want to try first. Or I don't know if typing. I shared my question in the chat. It's actually funny, we are Selk's bookkeepers, so we're like very adjacent to the thing, but I think we just became big members formally, so it's exciting to.
Oh, that's awesome. Hannah, well, why don't I answer Emma's question while Hannah, if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat. But yeah, Emma, that's a great question. I don't know if it was you and I that corresponded via email or if it was somebody else from your team. But in terms of getting started, in terms of just thinking about like, okay, as an employer, what different options do we have to offer? One sort of, there we go. One resource I will immediately direct you to is this webinar that was originally hosted in August of 2019, which is really focused on employee self-directed retirement plans. In that, there are a handful of case studies from different types of employers. I think one of them is Matt Kropp from the Vermont Employee Ownership Center, which might have some similar structural implications as to wholehearted bookkeeping. So I feel like that's a good place to start. And then I can also put you in touch with Kevin Bayuk and Aaron Axelrod of Lyft Economy. Lyft has its own kind of convoluted self-directed like employee retirement plan thing. It is not advisable, and a lot of lawyers have been like, I don't know if this is like the best option, because it is very high risk and relies on a lot of, honestly, like kinship type bonds across staff members. But it is worth at least acknowledging that they've done it and it's been successful. And in that process of creating that, they were able to kind of look at a lot of different options. So they could at least share some of their research and some of the legal and financial professionals they worked with, as well as some of the models that they explored. So I would say start with that as sort of a primer. And then as you have more specific questions, I'm happy to navigate those waters with you in the future.
Thank you so much. That's super helpful. And yeah, I think it was someone else on our team, but we all tried to take a part of today. And
yeah, perfect. Yeah, Hannah, anything from you? I know your audio is down, so maybe you're still typing. But would love to hear from you. And then, yeah, Jenny, you too.
Yeah, I have a solo 401k now. I've had it for a while, but I really don't do much with it because I don't know what to invest in.
Yeah.
So finding out ways to invest or yeah, I also do bookkeeping, but I don't. This is so foreign to me. This whole solo 401k and these webinars are great. I'm soaking it up, but there's just so much to learn.
Oh, there definitely is. It's and part of the Next Eggs kind of mission and value proposition is really to help folks navigate the waters, so it doesn't feel like, oh, I have to get like a whole law degree or some kind of other certification in order to navigate this. One thing I will recommend, I just chatted in the link. Next week, I don't know if you've already signed up, but on December 12th, we are hosting an Ask Me Anything session. It's a 90-minute session featuring a lot of folks who have either done self-directed retirement savings in their lifetime or have been really familiar with the landscape. And so the whole session is going to be on values-based investing. And I think it's a really good session for someone who maybe, like you, already has a self-directed retirement saving option and is kind of like, okay, now what do I do? I think that would be a good opportunity for you to get involved.
Yeah, I think I am signed up for that.
Oh, great. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that'll be great.
Oh, nice. This is awesome. Is this something that you designed yourself, Emma?
It was originally created by someone named Alex Fisher, who was at Cooperative Development Institute. When I was on the board there, they were the finance person and, kind of used this to like get the organization to invest in Seed Commons. We ended up deciding to invest in Seed Commons. And then I've adapted it. And with a lot of the information is not necessarily updated, but it's
that's awesome. Yeah, and I just shared one that members of the Next Egg have also compiled. So you can take a look at both of those. And again, as a disclaimer, this is not solicitation. This is just for educational purposes. You do need to do your own due diligence and work with the legal and financial professionals needed to think about those investments.
Okay, this is a lot of great information.
Yay!
I think it was Hannah said, working, 50 hours a week, finding the time.
I know. It's totally nuts. I hear you. Okay.
Very cool.
So I know we just have about a minute before Emma and Hannah have to jump. So any last minute burning questions?
I just have something I would want to share, that there's an accounting alchemy network, which is I since Emma, you're doing bookkeeping, they are looking to do regenerative accounting, and I think there a myriad of topics, but I think this topic is something that they would pick up and add to their whole ball of wax, I guess. But you might be interested in them. There's just a bunch of accounting professionals looking to do regenerative accounting, bookkeeping for small businesses.
That's amazing. I'm even wondering that might be a good partnership for the next egg too. If folks are, looking for accountants to help them support values aligned accountants. I've heard of this network before, but I don't know if we've publicly shared any information. Yeah.
Ingrid Edstrom, who is also Next Egg member, I believe.
Okay.
She's the one of the creators of that accounting alchemy accounting alchemy network, I think is what I called it.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'll reach out to Ingrid and see if there's any collaboration.
Yeah.
It's
a good fit.
All right. So,
oh, there you go.
Oh, good. Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm so glad that it was useful to you. And thanks for joining. And you too, Emma. Thanks for joining.
Can I just ask before I go, what does AMA stand for? I kept looking and I was
it stands for Ask Me Anything.
Oh, okay. I was just like a specific next egg thing.
No, all good. Ask Me Anything sessions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Take care.
And Jenny, will you be sticking around? Do you want to finish the webinar? No pressure.
I'm not sure what's left on it. What